Hello and welcome to the short Vort on Parshas Vayeitze. The Midrash Rabbah tells us that Yaakov Avinu learned for 14 years in the base Midrash of Eiver. The Torah tells us that Yaakov worked for Lavan for 14 years in order to marry Rachel and Leah. Is there a connection between these two 14 years? Let's listen and find out. Nosson Tzvi Finkel, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Yeshiva of MIr, who lived from 1943 to 2011, he asked, considering the spiritual risk to Yaakov Avinu of living with the evil Rasha, Lavan, was it worth listening to his parents to go there to find a wife, especially after he learned for 14 years in Yeshiva of Eiver? Rav Finkel answers that actually specifically that reason why Yaakov Avinu learned for 14 years. He realized that learning for 1 or 2 years would not be sufficient for him to protect himself spiritually. He needed 14 years to fortify himself for the amount of time that he would have to be by Lavan. Rav Nosson Tzvi Finkel makes a point for parents who send their children to learn in Eretz Yisrael in the yeshiva for a year or two. He said, that's great. But they don't realize that that's not enough to fortify someone for the nisyonos, for the test that would come for the rest of their life. More time is needed, a lot more time of learning. Rav Nosson Tzvi says that there's two parts to it. There's one is the to prepare yourself for the nisyonos, you have to spend the time, the years learning Torah, and B, that you have to go into the amkus of Torah, to go into the depth, a strict focus and to exclusion of others in order to be able to know what Hashem wants from us. And then you'll be fortified to be out in the world beyond the yeshiva walls. Rapinto, a great-grandson of the Baba Sali, says in a similar point. He says actually that it's Dafka 14 years that he learned in Yeshiva of Eiver, the yeshiva where you learn about Gullus, how to handle that type of world outside the safety of a Yitzchak Avinu, with whom Yaakov learned previously. And that was needed to correspond for the 14 years that he labored with this cheater Lavan in order to marry his daughters. And it's also 14 years, says Rabbi Pinto, that Yaakov Avinu taught Yosef before he went to Mitzrayim. Presumably that means from the age of 3, which then the people were 3 was a lot different, as we see by Rivka. They could be a lot more mature, or he started at a lower pace and he built up to teach Yosef Torah that would help him in the future when he was in Mitzrayim, face the different tests of being in the house of Potiphar, being in prison, and being the viceroy of Egypt. Rapinto points out that Torah is not just an escape, but it's actually a protection for us that we need in order to deal with a deceitful and cheating and impure world. Rapinto also points out that there was 7 years, 2 parts of 7 years, which corresponds to 7 years for Rachel and 7 years of Leah. That first part was a kind of a sur meirah, get away from evil, and then 7 years of Asay Tov. The first 7 years was working to go against, to subdue the forces of impurity, and the later years was developing his personal holiness and his personal goodness. So that's a lesson for everyone today, that the Torah is very important to be central in our life, to help us deal with the outside world. It takes a lot. We see that the Jews who don't have any Torah, that they fall for, since they don't believe in the truth, they believe the lies. And amazingly, 1/3 of the Jews who voted in the New York City mayoral election this year voted for an open anti-Semite because they don't have the Torah to fortify them. Let's make sure that we use the Torah, like listening to a short Vort and other Torah and our own textual and other studies, that we should be able to defend ourselves in this ever-changing and depreciating world. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful weekend, a wonderful Shabbos. Like, share, and subscribe.